Yep.
Most respected guest speaker for the day, Michael Messerole, who has his PhD and also is the director of the School of Health and Kinesiology at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. He also serves as the director of Physical Education Teacher Preparation Program, has over 30 years teaching experience at the P12 and post-secondary levels of physical education and adaptive physical education. He's a co-author of Unified Physical Education Resource Manual and has authored articles regarding unified physical education. He coaches a Special Olympics swim team and officiates wheelchair basketball. He's a dynamic presenter who makes learning fun by making sure all students feel included, challenged, and experience success. Dr. Messerole believes we are more alike than we are different, and games are not sacred, people are. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, a warm welcome to our most dignified speaker, Michael Messerole. Once again, I think your sessions have been extremely so good. That's why we keep asking again and again. So once again, a warm welcome to you, Michael Messerole. I also would like to welcome Dr. G. Kishore, who's the principal and regional director of SIL and CP. All my dear PE teachers was assembled, gotten to attend this particular session. A warm welcome to my dear PE teachers, to Mr. Amal, Harry, and Pranesh. To each one of you, a warm welcome to this very informative and interesting session. Over to you, Michael Messerole, for the session, please.
All right. Well, want to start by just kind of showing you where I am from. Dr. Usha asked me to share this with you, so let me, hopefully this works a little bit. So I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. It's in the middle of the country. And this, what you're kind of seeing here, is just a snapshot of my university. We're a university. We have about 15,000 students. We have over 110 majors. In my area of School of Health and Kinesiology, we have undergraduate programs, bachelor's programs, master's programs, and a PhD program. So right now we are heading into about the middle of fall season, headed into winter. Nice to say that this week we're in the 70s, but next week, 70-degree Fahrenheit. Next week we will be 40-degree Fahrenheit. So our temperatures vary quite a bit. Currently, we are in session, but we have about 75% of our classes are being taught remote or completely online. We have about 25% of our classes who are still face-to-face with COVID. I'm fortunate to say that we've had very few students test positive for COVID. We did have an outbreak in our athletics program. We had about 45 athletes test positive, so they had to shut down our athletic program for 2 weeks and to quarantine all of those athletes, but we are back up and running now. So with that being said, let's get to our program for today. So Usha, are you seeing the Unified Physical Education, the first slide? Okay, I'm not getting my green color normally. So the purpose of today, we're going to talk a little bit about unified physical education in sport and how it might potentially improve inclusion in communities. And I'll be upfront. I'm a big believer that in order to improve inclusive communities, make communities more inclusive, I do think it starts in the schools, because in the schools we have a little bit more control of what our students do and teachers do. And so hopefully by having our students experience inclusion in schools, that will carry over to their homes, which will carry over to their communities. And I'll present some information on what we're seeing are some positive changes as a result of seeing more inclusion in schools. But first I want to start with a video. And this video was put out by the Rio 2016 Paralympics. And what I want you to look at is it's called We're the Superhumans. And as you watch this video, my goal is for you, you're going to go, holy smokes, I can't believe these people can do these things. But I want you to think about, how did they get to this point? What had to happen for them to be as good as they are athletically? But you're also going to see some very good musicians in this video. And at some point, somebody had to say yes. And it could be a teacher, it could be something, but I want you to think about, how did they get to this point? How did they go from having a disability and being looked down on to being a good athlete or a good musician? So let me and here we go.
Yes, I can, suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence in me. Got the feeling I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today, I can go all the way, yes, I can. 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 Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can! Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes!
So as you can see, some amazing talent there. I do want to let you know that at the end, where the gentleman in the wheelchair was taken off, he did hit the landing. Did make the landing, so that is good. So the purpose of this, or what? Hang on. Sorry, just want to get back here. So the purpose of showing you this is, one, there's the variety of disabilities that you saw. But more importantly, how did they get from the disability to overcoming seeing their disability to becoming a good athlete or good musician. And I'm going to say that at some point, somebody had to say, yes, you can. And not just one time, but multiple times. You know, many of our people, individuals with disability are marginalized, and they're told many, many times, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. Well, as we know that when a person hears no, you can't multiple times, they start believing, no, I can't. And so I think we as teachers, our goal is to get our students to say, yes, I can. Whether it be our students with disabilities, whether it be our students who are maybe a little bit slower learners, maybe it's our students who are gifted but don't realize they're gifted because somebody has told them they're not gifted. Or students that are high performers but are afraid to take that next step because they have a fear of failure because they equate their worth with being able to do something right the first time and being able to do it perfect, which is an unrealistic unrealistic expectation. So one of the things that we want to get to is, well, let me jump back. So you'll hear people talk about equality. You know, we want equal treatment and that type of thing. So let's look at what equality is. So in this instance, equality is all three individuals have the same height of box to stand on. However, you can see that only two of the three individuals can see the football game that's going on. So equality doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is being given the same opportunities. They're given this, in this instance, they're given the same opportunity to stand on a box, yet that opportunity is not going to allow them to see the game. So then we're going to go to this equity. So let's move up a step to equity. With equity, everybody gets the support that they need, which is good. So you can see the taller gentleman on the left doesn't need a box. The person in the middle does need a box to see, and the shorter person on the right with the yellow shorts needs two boxes. So they got their two boxes. So right now everybody can see, which is great. We got to that point where everybody can see what's going on. Everybody can watch the game. But what we're really trying to get to is we're trying to get to this justice piece. And with justice, it's what we're doing is we're removing the systemic barriers. And in this case, the systemic barrier was a physical barrier. So we got rid of the solid fence, put up a chain link fence. Now everybody can see through it. So all three can see, nobody needs a box or support of that kind. So in education, what we want to get to, what we're ultimately trying to get to is this justice point. And these systemic barriers are really important to understand. So with the systemic barriers, realize that these barriers can be physical barriers, they can be emotional barriers. But students and our athletes, they'll put barriers on themselves. So I want you to take I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and in your mind, just think of what are some barriers that students or athletes place on themselves. Go.
Mike, could I ask them to put it in the chat box?
Sure, that'd be great. Yes.
My dear participants, can you just put in the chat box what barriers do athletes and students place on themselves? हिंदी में बोलना चाहती कि एथलीट्स को किस मुसीबतों का सामना करना पड़ता है या बच्चों को अपने ऊपर, तो इसके बारे में प्लीज लिखिए. Please do write in the chat box. Mike is waiting for that and I'll read it out. Just maybe 10 more seconds to go. Low self-esteem, Shivangi has written. Amal, Fatima sir.
Yeah.
hard to talk to the
Or talk
coach,
to coach.
confidence when they reach the top level, financial support, freedom to talk. Great, my dear PE teachers, you're doing a wonderful job. So these were some of the.
So if you look at these that you all have listed, the freedom to talk, not able to talk to the coach, confidence when they reach the top level, low self-esteem. These barriers they place on themselves, but typically they're placed on themselves because somebody else has placed this on them or got them to believe that I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. I can't afford this. Now, finances, that is definitely a barrier, especially if you're talking elite athletes. But so those are some barriers, and that self-confidence barrier is really a big one. And those of you, when we teach physical education, a lot of times we can see that the students who are not confident in their ability to move. But we also have parents. Parents place barriers on their children. So for 30 seconds, let's, in the chat, if you will just put in one or two barriers that you think parents place on their children.
The parents किस तरह का मुश्किल खड़ा करते हैं बच्चों के लिए. Yeah, there are some cases with the parents. Can you kindly put in the chat box, please? Academic pressure, the most important. Great. Children's hobby is not useful in terms of sport. They don't find sport as a performance by parents.
Performance by parents.
Yes. Third.
Yeah, these are excellent.
Another important thing they said is given those children who have disability, for them, the parents do not support them to get involved in any physical activity. There's no social support. High expectation from parents, no time for study. So parents insist academic pressure for studies. And parents are not very knowledgeable.
So let's briefly talk about the high expectations from parents. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having high expectations. I think the key there is unrealistic expectations. They place so much. The parents feel that their child is much better than they actually are, and therefore are putting some undue expectations on their child. In addition, one of the things that we've seen is when parents compare one child to the other, or when a parent compares the child to themselves, especially when they compare the child to themselves as an adult and the child is still a child. That, again, that gets back into that kind of that expectations. And really, one of the issues that we run into is the children are afraid to fail, to try and fail when their parents are present. So it's easier to be what I would consider kind of just a standby, where you kind of go through the motions. It looks like you're involved in the activity, but you really don't want to be involved in the activity. So you could see, for example, in a football game, a student who they move up and down the field, but they never call for the ball. They never want the ball passed to them. They may even avoid playing defense, but they are moving. So it looks like they're part of the game, but they really don't want to have anything to do with it because they don't want to have that opportunity to fail. And then, probably more as important is, as good as we are, people, as good as we are as teachers and coaches, there are times when we put barriers on our students. Most of the time, it's not intentional, it's unintentional. So what are some of those barriers that we place on students? Let's use the chat again. And I do appreciate your participation in this. So
Mike, teachers, please, what are the barriers which teachers, coaches, they place on our students? ये बोला गया कि हम लोग जो टीचर्स और कोचेस है बच्चों को किस तरह का मुश्किलें खड़ा करते हैं, जानबूझ के नहीं है, लेकिन अनजाने में बच्चों को आगे बढ़ने में हम मदद नहीं कर पाते, तो उस तरह किस तरह की मुसीबत आती है. So kindly put into the chat box, please. Autocratic style of teaching is one. time issues is a second. Is there any more? I think the panelists, they have been saying that the leadership style, laziness in part of the teacher. Okay, any more?
Yep.
Any more? Time factor.
Time.
About that,
So-
the teachers are unable to give enough of, they devote time for the students.
Right. And when I see that time issue, for those of you that put it, when I see that, I think of, I have X number of students in my class or on my team, and I don't have enough time for each one individually. That's kind of how I take that time thing. And really what that leads to is, how much feedback are we able to give our students and our athletes? And is that feedback, when we do give that feedback, is it always corrective feedback, or is there a lot of positive feedback? Because we do know that if everything is always corrective, pretty soon that student or athlete is going to start thinking, boy, I'm not very good. I'm not very good. I'm not doing good enough. I keep doing this wrong, as opposed to pointing out at times that positive feedback with regard to, here's the thing, here's something you did well, and giving them that positive feedback. And from what research tells us, that ratio should be about 3 positive statements to 1 corrective statement. Helps to keep the student athlete's mind in a positive light, thinking that, yes, I am making progress, I am improving, or I am doing some things well, even though I might not be doing this one thing well. So with that being said, by the way, thank you for your participation. When we talk about inclusion is no different than teaching a sports skill or a concept, because inclusion is a concept, and for students to be able to understand what inclusion is, they really need to experience it. But it also needs to be modeled by the teacher and by administrators at the school district. And so what does inclusion look like? So I'm going to show you a video. This is an elementary school. This is a school that has self-contained classrooms, which means, for self-contained means that the children with disabilities are primarily educated in their own classroom and don't have much integration with the general school population. So let me go to this. All right.
School grounds and no one's saying hi to them.
There we go.
Simon says, put your hands in the air. Right here. Simon says, wave them around. The program that we teach in is considered a self-contained room. My students know when they're not included. Walking around the school grounds and no one saying hi to them and not paying them any attention when they see all the other kids walking by, and it's tough to watch. I think Special Olympics unified sports is giving everyone a purpose, because the kids want to be here and want to make an impact, and they are making an impact with my students.
Copper King on 3. 1, 2, 3. Copper King.
My brother is Marcus Hodge. He has a disability. He is like the complete world to me. I love him so much.
I've had Marcus since I started. Nice job! I started going to his Special Olympic events and just watching kids compete and how proud they are. I was like, well, this would be awesome if we could ever do that at Copper King.
Good job, Marcus.
Angelica pitched me on Special Olympics Unified Sports. And I said yes, absolutely.
And I told her this is the process behind starting up, unified sports at your school.
They'll give us jerseys, they would give us the transportation, the equipment that we would need, and they would pay for all of it. The second year of the program, we would have to meet them halfway, so mostly with transportation. And by the third year, we should be up and running to continue funding ourselves, which is how the Coyote Cafe started. The Coyote Cafe is a little coffee shop that we run out of the back of our classroom. My students go around and fulfill the order. It's also another way of getting them into the general ed classrooms, giving my students the opportunity of learning job skills. So it was really solving two shortcomings with how do we start fundraising for the future, but also how do we keep developing our students to succeed to the next level. After the Coyote Cafe, we went on to inclusive ukuleles. Inclusive ukulele was kind of our into getting kids involved in our program and wanting them to come over. And it included my students and our general ed peers.
Okay, ready?
It's adaptive, so every student is capable of being able to play it. They're being included and being able to do it and sing along with their friends at the same time. Inclusive ukuleles kind of created a buzz. I mean, we had these kids who were coming over from 5th grade and playing the ukuleles, and that their peers became more interested in, well, why can't I do that? Like, I want to get involved with that.
Inclusive ukulele opened up a big conversation about inclusion. It opened up an opportunity for Special Olympics Unified Sports.
We practiced 2 days a week and just 25 minutes at the end of the day. They enjoyed it, but they were also at the same time building that connection with their unified partners. The day before the first event, I wanted them to try on their jerseys. They went in the bathroom, they put it on, and the first one walked out and he just strutted out with this big smile on his face, and he was so proud of himself. It doesn't matter if he doesn't get a ribbon, if he doesn't get a medal, he's wearing something that he's proud of. Being 12 and being able to be proud of yourself is a feeling that he might have not had before had it not been for Special Olympics Unified Sports. It's been really amazing being able to grow with the kids that I've been teaching, because most of them I've had since I've started here.
Yeah, I did it fine.
It's fun here?
Yeah, I did.
But we will all play, okay? 1, 2, 3, go! All right.
I think that if you're trying to set out and be that unified champion school, you have to start small and continue to build. At the end of the day, it touches your heart.
I got it.
So as you can see, this unified concept, or this inclusive concept, is not just on the sports field or in physical education, but in this was an elementary school example where they started with the unified sports, and it really progressed out to you saw the unified ukuleles. I know schools that have started doing unified band, unified music, unified art. But what ends up happening is, while physical education sport is inclusive, this inclusivity starts to manifest itself and spreads throughout the school community. And so there are a lot of opportunities that are given to the students of both groups. So as you watch the video, if you saw all the smiles, everybody was smiling, whether they were a special education student or if they were one of the peers, one of the general education students who's participating in these unified activities. So in physical education, we talk about what students bring into the physical education class. And there's a theory out there called dynamic pattern theory. And basically what it means is that we have the individual capabilities, what they're bringing into the class. We have the task demands of whatever activity we planned for that day in physical education, or the activity that we planned for our practice, and then the environmental constraints. And we have to really consider all three of these when we are working with any children, but specifically with children with disabilities. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to go over a couple of things briefly. So the individual capabilities, you can see, when we have a student that has a disability, it could be that it's a sensory loss, or they have loss of some motor abilities. They might have low cognition, so they may have an intellectual disability. Many times, flexibility is an issue and strength is an issue. Several disabilities have hypotonia, which is low muscle tone. They're cardiovascular. Many disabilities, a secondary occurrence is, or secondary health condition is some type of cardiovascular issue. And height and weight, we are our height. We do have a little bit of control over our weight, but some children do not have control over their weight because of secondary health conditions. So they're bringing these things in, and it's important for us as teachers and coaches to understand what are our students and athletes bringing to us. The task demand is the speed accuracy. So when we're teaching something new, is it more important that we work on the speed or we work on the accuracy? And what are the requirements? What are the requirements of the task? Can we do is it a moving task, or is it a stationary task? Is it a seated task or a standing task? What are the demands, the physical demands of the task? And then what is the goal of the task? Now, if you look at these as a teacher and a coach, we can control many of these. We can control how fast we want our athletes or our students to do things. We can change the requirements of the activity a little bit. We can practice an activity seated versus standing. We can maybe modify the demands on the body. For example, we can maybe decrease the size of the playing area to decrease the physical demands on our athletes or on our students. We can modify the goal. Instead of the goal being winning or losing, maybe the goal is improving, running a play correctly 2 times. Maybe the goal is to be able to control the ball in football or soccer, be able to control the ball the length of the field, as opposed to getting down the field as fast as possible. So we can set those constraints, what those goals are. And then we have the environmental constraints. And the environmental constraints, many times we do not have control over. We might not have control over the type of surface that we're playing on. We may not have control over the lighting, although if we're in a gymnasium, we might be able to control the lighting a little bit. The visual flow is what is all going on around us visually as we're trying to do this activity. And the stability of the environment. So Let's take a student who is on the autism spectrum. A student who's on the autism spectrum may have issues with sound and light changing with lights and a lot of movement around them. So what we might be able to do to help control the environmental constraints, we might be able to dim the lights a little bit, possibly, maybe not. We may have to put earmuffs on or something to reduce the sound that's coming in. So we have those kind of those headphone looking things. We may have to set up a routine so that when they come into my gym, they do the same thing the first 15 minutes. So when they come in, they have a place to stand. That's their designated place. They always stand next to the same 2 other students. We do our warm up the same way each time so that they have that consistency, so they know what's going to happen. And by the way, we do know that if students and our athletes know what is coming or know what we're going to be doing, they tend to perform better because they know what the expectation is instead of having to guess what the expectation is or what's coming next. So with these things in mind, the other way that we can control or modify our games or activities, and the reason we're talking about modifying our games or activities now is because the goal for inclusion is we talk about including people with disabilities, but with inclusion, we're talking about including everybody. And those of you that have taught and coached, you know that every student brings their own characteristics into the class. You have some movers that are high ability movers. They can do anything. They pick up stuff quickly. And then you have those athletes that don't move really well, don't pick up physical activities real quick, but they haven't been diagnosed with a disability. And so the goal is to make everybody in the class feel comfortable, allow them all to have success, yet still be challenged so that it's not 100% success rate. There needs to be some failure because without failure, we don't learn. But if all we do is fail, what we learn is I'm not very good at this, or I don't like this task. So there's a fine line between success and failure. So what we can do is, we can make rules modifications. So I like to use football as an example. And in the United States, when and we call football soccer in the United States. So when we're playing soccer in the United States, and we have 4-year-olds that are playing, there are very few soccer rules that we use. Really, the only rule is we want to keep the ball on the field. But we don't worry about handballs. We don't even have goalies. So what we're doing is we're making some modifications, and I'm going to continue that using that soccer or football analogy, because equipment, what do we do with equipment? Well, the goals when we play 4-year-old soccer are smaller to accommodate the smaller kids. The other rule that we have is there's no goalie because we want a lot of movement. We decrease the number of players. So, regulation soccer is 11 on 11. 4-year-old soccer usually is going to be 3 on 3 or possibly 4 on 4. We decrease the size of the playing area. I don't know if you can imagine putting 4-year-olds on a regulation soccer field and throwing a ball out there and say, okay, go play. You're going to have usually one individual that will take the ball and just go like crazy, and everybody else is kind of just standing around wondering when they're going to bring the ball back, or they're chasing them around a little bit, but not getting a lot of touches on the ball. And the goal is to get a lot of touches on the ball, a lot of practice time. And then the other one is movement patterns. So with movement patterns, if we have a student that has a disability, for example, let's say they're missing one limb, and so they may be on crutches. That changes their movement pattern. So how can we modify the activity to accommodate their movement patterns? There's a Paralympic sport called sitting volleyball. And sitting volleyball is played sitting down. The rules are generally the same, but one of the rules is that when you make contact with the ball, you have to have a butt cheek touching the ground, or if you're laid out, the side of your body touching the ground. Other than that, the rules are pretty much the same. The court size is decreased, the net is lowered because you're sitting instead of standing. But it is a very fast-paced game. I encourage you to Google sitting volleyball sometime and watch that Paralympic sport. But the movement pattern is seated, but they're not stationary. They're constantly moving, just like they are in standing volleyball. But the movement looks differently. So I showed you initially that the second video that we watched, or just the previous video, was an elementary, what goes on in elementary. So I'm going to share what inclusion might look like at the secondary level, the high school level. So let me do something here real quick. Okay. So this is what it might look like.
I say yes is our motto. Our student, Ronnie Brown, if you ask him questions, he'll say,
I say yes. It's I say yes to everything. I can do this, that I will come in tomorrow and try again. And it's I say yes to believing in each other.
What was your favorite part of Monday? I want to know what everybody's favorite part of Monday was. Then we're going to go through our stuff, okay?
Most of my students are students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our kids are incorporated into all areas of the high school. They are respected the same as anyone else. It's authentic. I fully believe it began with Susan Thompson.
When I first started working here, we were the first classroom for life skills. I wanted to get on-campus jobs because I felt that our students need to have job skills. And that just put us everywhere in the school. It doesn't matter what your disability is. It doesn't matter what you look like. You will be a functional part of this community. All this hard work has honestly paid off. And it's really neat to see them succeed. And I feel like Unified has just made it even better.
Perfect. You did it. And now we're gonna put KK's fingers in the ball like this.
I was approached by Special Olympics Texas, and they said, we want to implement a program called Unified Champion Schools. It's a program to promote inclusion on a school campus beyond the scope of just sports. Part of that process is having your administrator come on board. I knew that we would have the support of Mr. Garcia.
The letter of commitment, it really was not a big deal for me to sign it, but I understood the amount of work and focus that it was placing on them.
And once that happened, we had to get everyone on campus involved.
Something that I would say to someone who wants to start this is, the students owning this is the key. It really is. We sent an email out to all the club sponsors and coaches, and we said, nominate one person from your club or team to be an ambassador for you guys.
I'm Michaela. I'm from everything, but I represent softball and student council.
Let's decide how we're gonna do this. Everybody has to make it their own. Each ambassador then goes back and says, okay, we're gonna do a unified event. What does that look like?
So today we're gonna be going over like Food Truck Friday, a bunch of No Place for Hate stuff, and then how we're gonna be working with Unified.
I don't know how best to incorporate the kids into a softball game, but those kids do because they're on the softball team. That's why it's really important to put it back in the hands of the team and not dictate what happens, because they know more of the ins and outs.
I think it's like imperative that students drive it, because you just kind of can get on the same page more easily. If a teacher tells you to do something, 9 times out of 10, a student will think I want to do it. But if you have other students that are working on it, you'll feel more inclined to participate and help.
I just love how it has grown. It started off really small, and then the whole school got more involved.
People with or without disabilities, like all sorts.
Students would come in and say, hey, can we do this? My response would be, I say yes.
It's awesome because everyone gets to see what they can do.
I'm here today to tell you how we started this program.
Without Unified, it would have taken a lot longer to get to where we are right now.
Making new friends that I never thought I would make.
This award exemplifies all that is good about our students, staff, community, and district. Look at what young people can do when you get out of their way.
Getting to see how this has impacted my students, it is one of the biggest joys of my life.
It's okay to start small, and to know that you've been a small part of it is amazing.
Everyone is welcome. Like, no one is going to be like, pushed away.
It's not just like a club where we like attend events.
A lot of hard work, but it's worth it.
I encourage everybody to have Unified if you can. Forge the way. Say, I say yes.
So we've been going now for about 50 minutes. And when I teach my classes, the longest I ever lecture is about 20 minutes, and then we change things up a little bit. What I'd like you to do right now is, for the next 30 seconds, I would like you to stand up, just get out of that seat, stretch out. Do some type of movement. So let's do it for, actually, we're going to do it for 1 minute. So 1 minute, let's get up and get moving. While I switch back to the right. Oh, there we go. So just so you know, those of you, I know you've had a long day of work and this is the end of your day. Well, it's 6:30 a.m. my time, so we started, or 6:20 a.m. So we started this at about 5:30 a.m. my time, which is earlier than I normally get up. But I am happy to be here with you today. I'm enjoying this, and hopefully you'll enjoy the last half of the program as well. So I think our minute is probably up. Oh, geez. So let's get back in whatever position you're in, whether it be sitting, standing, wherever you're comfortable. And let's move on here, continue on. So that was a high school, and you saw what happened at how the elementary program got started. And what you might have noticed is that in both of those, it takes many people. It takes buy-in from the teaching staff. It takes buy-in from the administration that this inclusion is important. I think the unique thing at the high school level is that while it was teacher initiated, the students took ownership over it, and the students really led the inclusion process. At both the elementary and the high school, you saw that there were many activities, not just sport activities or educational activities, that the students with disabilities were included in. One of the things I do want to mention is that what we found from research is that initially people say, oh, this inclusion thing is only good for those with disabilities. which is totally false. What we find is that the kids without disabilities who are part of inclusion start recognizing the similarities they have with people with disabilities. And this carries over to their peers. They start recognizing the similarities they have with their peers. So, you know, that individual who is in the general education but doesn't dress as nice as others, students start overlooking that. They start seeing the similarities. And so this inclusive thing, while it's geared around people with disabilities, it really becomes inclusive for all. All students start recognizing the gifts that each individual student has, which then hopefully carries into the home when the students talk about these inclusion things that we're doing at our school. Let me see here. So let's get to the unified physical education and what unified physical education is. So obviously it has to be some type of inclusive practice because that's the purpose of what we're talking about today. So unified physical education really is we're bringing students without disabilities and students with disabilities together on equal footing to learn physical education content. And so in the United States, it's a fully inclusive, it's an academic course. The goal is to have a similar number of students with and without disabilities whenever possible. So that's kind of the inclusive part of it. All students enter the class on equitable social footing and are treated as equals. So they're considered teammates. It's not the students without disabilities are there to help or to mentor the students with disabilities. It's a class and they're all learning the content together. So they are teammates. The other part of that is the instruction then becomes intentional to provide opportunities for all students. At least in the United States, sometimes we have schools that say they're inclusive because they include kids without disabilities in physical education classes. And usually it might be one or two children with disabilities or who are in a regular physical education class. While the instruction, majority of the time, I'd say probably 99.9% of the time, is really geared toward the students that don't have a disability. And the students with a disability are kind of left on the sideline. You know, the teacher will get the class going and then may go over to the student with the disability and say, oh, I want you to do this instead, or make modifications instead of, in their instructions, giving all students opportunities to succeed. And I'll give you an example. So if I'm teaching a class, and let's just say I'm teaching a badminton class, or that's the activity for the day. And I know I have students in there that some of them that have badminton experience and others that have no experience whatsoever. So if I require that every student use the same length of racket, the same type of racket, what I would consider a traditional badminton racket, there's going to be some frustration on those students that really have not had much experience. However, if I have some racquetball rackets and some pickleball rackets and some other rackets and let students choose which racket they want to use to begin with, then they have some control over their learning. They have control over, I'm going to try this racket. If it doesn't work, I can go get a different racket. We know that, those of us that are physical educators, you know that a short-handled racket is easier to manipulate than a long-handled racket. And so we may see that some students have more success with a short-handed racket. Does it matter if they're using a badminton racket? Not really, because they're still learning the content. They're learning how to strike a birdie or the shuttlecock with the badminton, with a racket. They're learning the rules of where it should land in bounds. All those things can still be taught. Now, if we're talking about competition, then they have to have the appropriate racket for a true competition. But competition within my class, do I really care which type of racket they're using? There are advantages and disadvantages to those rackets, and the students will actually they will learn what those advantages and disadvantages are. So the other piece of this is the content is based on our either state or national standards. So it's not just a class where we're just going to roll out the ball and say, I hope everybody gets along and I hope everything is shared. No, we have specific content that needs to be covered. And then the last piece of this is that in the United States, it's important that all students receive physical education credit. So we have some schools in the United States that do a modified, what I'd consider modified unified physical education. And that is where the general education students come in as peer helpers. And they don't get physical education credit for it. They get a different type of credit, which doesn't put them on equal footing with the people they're helping. And that is why it's important that they all receive physical education credit as opposed to mentoring credit or something along those lines. So a couple of things with regard to the unified physical education. We really believe that sharing the same space is not inclusion. Inclusion is about building a community of learners. So think of it this way. Some people think inclusion is you invite people to a dance. That's inclusion. That's not inclusion. Inclusion is being asked to dance while they're at the dance. So using that dance analogy, we have a school dance or a community dance, and we invite everybody to come, and we have some individuals with disabilities who are there, but they're really on the sideline. Nobody has asked them to dance. Once they're asked to dance, that's when inclusion truly begins, because people can see them as an individual, not as an outcast or not as somebody who is different than them. The other thing with unified physical education, and I would say with any physical education, success can look differently to different students. We might have to identify what that success looks like. For example, if I have a student that, let's say we're doing some type of target game, throwing or something, and if I have a student that doesn't have the ability to move their arms in what do we consider a mature pattern where they're bringing the arm over their head and doing an overhand throw, I've got to figure out what throwing will look like for that student. So if they have limited use of their arms, throwing might actually be dropping something onto a target. They have to move their hand or move their arm, whatever little bit they can, and then drop an object onto a target. So that might be what successful throwing looks like for that individual. As a good educator, you do have to be willing to adapt lessons and activities to ensure that every student learns and achieves success at their own pace. This is the other thing, is that our kids, all children learn at different rates. And sometimes as teachers, we get frustrated because our students are learning at different rates, and those that learn quicker, we have to come up with additional challenges for them to keep them engaged and keep them challenged. But at the same time, those who are lesser skilled, we can't progress as fast because they will get frustrated because they don't have the requisite skills to move on to that next activity. So it's real important that we are willing to modify and adapt our lesson. And I think that is what good teaching is, regardless if you have kids with or without disabilities. And I really think that effective teaching, this last one, effective teaching for students with disabilities is the same as effective teaching for all students. If you are what I would consider a quality educator, you are one that believes that all children can learn, that all children learn at different rates, and that me as the teacher, I have to figure out what that rate is, and I have to give them the appropriate challenges at the appropriate times. I also know that by giving them some control over their learning, just by allowing them to choose the piece of equipment they're going to use, or the size of the ball they're going to use, or whatever it is, that is going to help them learn at the appropriate rate. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have some children who will try to get by with as little as possible, but that's where those of us as the teacher, that we see that they have the ability, and so we have to encourage them and push them beyond what they think they can do. So in the United States, what it would typically look like is with this inclusive or unified physical education class, the first couple of days are icebreakers. The students get to know each other. You know, if I'm a student with a disability coming into a class and I don't know anybody in that class, it can be intimidating. But at the same token, if I'm a general education student and I come into a class and I see these kids who are acting differently than the norm, that will be intimidating. So what I mean by differently than the norm is, you know, those students that have outbursts, that can show their excitement by getting loud and making hand gestures, and also show their frustration by getting loud and making hand gestures. And that takes time for people who are not used to them to get used to them. And so these icebreakers really work well to start, for the students to start seeing the similarities that they have and not focusing on the differences. And then we do several days of instruction, skill development, and then which culminates in some type of authentic situation. And then we also do, the assessment occurs throughout the course, not just at one ending location. So I've talked a lot about unified physical education and unified sports and inclusion. And Special Olympics North America has done some research on inclusive schools and those schools that have done some inclusion things. And I think it's really important to understand the impact that doing some of these inclusive activities can have in a school. So if you look at this, it says students are engaged in program development, develop valuable pro-social skills. I don't know, with the exception of professional athletes, and maybe they're not even the exception, social skills are much more important than physical skills. Sports skills typically don't get you a job and definitely don't allow you to keep the job unless you're a professional athlete. But social skills, being inclusive, being able to get along with people of different abilities, people of different color, people of different beliefs, people of different ability, those differences is huge for getting a job and keeping your job and keeping a job and having the right social characteristics. You know, being able to handle disappointment in the appropriate way, being able to handle excitement in the right way, so that the social skills are much more important than physical or sports skills. So you can see that their attitudes have changed. 87% feel better about helping others. Their emotional attitudes and can affect others. 85%, they're understanding those things. But this 82% here on the right, 82% of students felt they were able to change their school for the better. To me, that's huge. Because if a student believes that they can change their school for the better, that tends to carry on beyond the school day. And they start thinking, if I can change my school for the better, maybe I can change my community for the better. Or maybe I can change my family climate for the better. So in the beginning, I talked about how this inclusion and unified activities helps all students. This is what I'm getting at. These 82% of these students, these aren't all students with disabilities. Most of these students are students without disabilities. The other part that came about is that friendships were made during the unified activities that carried out beyond the school day. So 71% of the students with and without intellectual disabilities remained in contact with each other after the inclusion program was done and after graduation. So this friendship network may have started here, but because of this, it has grown. And one thing we do know that you can never have too many friends, right? You can never have too many friends. And then this 84% of the students regard their experiences within Unified Champion Schools. So that's the inclusive physical education, inclusive sport, unified sports, the unified clubs that happened. That was a positive turning point for them to understanding differences of people and being accepting of those differences. And if we're talking about, which is great for the school setting, but knowing that carries out beyond the school setting, goes into the community. They start noticing the similarities they have with people that they may not have associated with before. All positives. So one last thing with this unified physical education. So one of the things that people think against it is they think, you know what, if you bring these kids without disabilities into physical education, my regular students aren't going to get as much physical activity because everything's going to get slowed down. Well, the reality is that they get increased physical activity because they're trying harder to be good role models. Those students in the general physical education who don't like physical education, don't like to move, in a unified physical education, they don't feel as isolated. They now start to feel part of the group, so they start moving more as well. They start trying harder. That fear of failure decreases. We have that increased acceptance of individual differences, improved positive climate for the school, increased feelings of self-worth, all of those things that we talked about. And if you go back to those, when I'd asked you what barriers students put on themselves, that feeling of self-worth or not having the confidence, that barrier actually decreases. They stop worrying about how am I going to look failing in front of somebody. And so that this inclusivity, this unified concept really plays dividends for all students. All right, I want to show you one more video, and then we're going to get to some questions. And I do have some resources at the end too that I want to share, that I'll share with you as well. So this would be a good time to take a deep breath. Relax a little bit.
Unified Sports is a unique opportunity to bring a competitive sport to a population that hadn't had that before. We have Division I programs, we have Division II programs, we have Division III programs, and Unified is no different. It's just a different level of competition.
That's what makes sports so powerful. It makes kids from all different backgrounds, it puts them on an equal playing field, and it allows them to be spotlighted.
Having those sports for them, it's good because it gets them out there. Special Olympics has basically made them more outgoing kids and more happy kids. And for my kids to be known and what they do, it's pretty awesome.
Unified Sports are providing the opportunity for students with and without intellectual disabilities to participate in activities together. The more and more that we're immersed in a district from the earliest of grade levels all the way through college will just ensure that inclusion is just completely immersed in a child's life.
So my job basically is to take the subject area of physical education and make it possible so all students can succeed at it. Okay, so I'm gonna say, Lauren, just say her name, toss her the ball, and she says thank you, and she says the person's name back. Students in the general education program and students in the special education program get to be together every single day and learn so much from each other.
Thank you, Matthew. My name's Julia. Trent.
Aaron. Giselle. Now we're moving. Once these kids got 86 minutes a day together, you're really able to take those relationships and build on them.
Well, Matthew is probably the most popular kid in the school. He knows everyone, right? You know everyone? Everyone knows you.
Matthew and Grace, knowing each other since 3rd grade, they've never had the opportunity to have a class together. I mean, Matthew's got his classes, Grace has got her classes, but because of unified PE, for the first time, they got to come together and learn together in this physical education environment.
There's just something about Unified that connects everyone together. It's something that people just bond over really easily. Everyone kind of knows everyone in the school now.
I'll see you later. Okay, I'll see you later. Work hard. I'm watching. Bye, Mickey.
There is this great world out there that you can go out and conquer. This charge going forward is important because in reality, it'll change the world in the way we see things as opportunities.
I think it's huge for our kids to see the differences among their friends, among their peers, and to interact with people who are different culturally, physically, racially, economically. We just think that that's a really important thing that we can give to our kids, and to be able to be a part of that is amazing.
Remember, let's have lots of fun. I think there's 20 different stations for you to participate in. Showcase those skills, have some fun with it, and live unified. Repeat after me. Live unified. Live unified.
Their level of confidence and belonging in a community and the joy, really, of a lot of our athletes. I don't think before this program you would have seen that.
And this has created all of these different opportunities for these kids to do stuff together inside and outside of school. The idea then, hopefully, it goes from the gym, then it goes to the hallways, and it goes to the lunchroom, and eventually goes out there into the community where everybody can just be together and be unified outside.
So at this point, I've shown you kind of what it looks like in the United States. But you might be thinking, well, how is this going to work in India? What might it look like in India, this unified concept? Because I know the schools in India are segregated. You have schools specifically for people with disabilities and those without. I can give you kudos because through my Special Olympic contacts, they have told me that India has a large percentage of unified sports programs. So that tells me that there's some inclusion going on right now with unified sports programs. Where I see this expanding is in the unified physical education realm. And what I see potentially happening is 2 schools partnering up to do just like you do for unified sports, partnering up for unified physical education or for other unified activities, unified programs. As I said in the beginning, I don't think children will have a good understanding of what inclusion is if they don't experience it. And when they do experience it, for the majority of them, it is a positive experience and one that is a life-changing experience. And when you have a life-changing experience, you tend to want to share that experience with others, whether it be with siblings, with parents, with family members, with friends. And and that kind of spreads the word, and people start going, what is this inclusion thing? What is this thing called unified sports or unified physical education that's going on in my community? And so that's kind of how I see the potential for a unified physical education program in India. But again, I do want to compliment you, and I don't know how many of you are part of a unified sports program, but I know there are, at one time I knew the exact number, but I want to, there are hundreds of programs, unified sports programs in India. So let's stop here for a minute and let's take some questions. So Dr. Usha, whoever's wants to ask some questions.
Mike, could you stop sharing the slide? Are you continuing with this? Could we stop sharing?
Yep. There.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was such a wonderful session. You took us through a journey and we really enjoyed. We were part of the unified sport. We are over to Amal for the questions, followed by him. I will take it. Yes, Amal, please.
Sir, I have two questions. Okay, I will start with the one. Sir, when I go through the last Rio Paralympics medal table, but I can find that China is a country which is in first position almost with 100 points lead with the second position. As an expert in this field, what will be the reason behind their success? 100 points mean it is a huge difference, is it?
Can you say that, repeat the question? There's some echoing, so I didn't quite, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Sir, when I go through the last Rio Paralympics medal table, what I can find that China is a country which is in first position almost with 100 points leads with the second position. As an expert in this field, what will be the reason behind their success? 100 points means it is really big enough, is it?
So if I heard the question right, we're talking about Paralympics and we're talking about the success that China had in the Paralympics. Yet they're not a very inclusive country when it comes to people with disabilities. So China really, when their Paralympic, and I got to kind of remember my history here, when they were hosting the Olympics, they knew that they had to host the Paralympics as well, because it's the Paralympics occurs at the same venues as the Olympics. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks after the Olympics. And now this is my opinion. Okay. I think every country that hosts the Olympics wants to have a good showing in the Olympics and in the Paralympics. And so I think this was an impetus for them to start to promote their Paralympic athletes and programs to train athletes with disabilities. And so I think that is one of the reasons that you saw some success, because they started this, and they had plus they have a real large population. And so they had a lot of athletes with disabilities to choose from. And so I know that whole planning and training of athletes started many, many years before they hosted the Paralympics. I think many countries, the Paralympic athletes are, well, let me do it this way. In the United States, Paralympic athletes are not funded like our Olympic athletes. And because our funding is not government-based, it's donation. Whereas several other countries who their Olympic funding comes from the government have started funneling funds into Paralympic support as well. And so I think that's one of the reasons China has really grown as a Paralympic sport organization, because they see the value and they want the world to see that they have really good athletes. I mean, that's the whole point of the Olympics, is for I think every country is to show pride in our country and put our best foot forward. And that's what they're trying to do, put their best foot forward with regard to Olympics and Paralympics. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's.
Okay, sir. I have one more question, sir. I'm talking about the kindergarten session especially. Sir, normally we can find that only 1 or 2 may be disabled in a class. In such cases, how can we include such children all the time? So if we are modifying the rules, other kids may not be agree with it because they are not mature enough to accept such changes.
Okay, so it's a great question because that's a question we get often. So the question is, if I'm always modifying rules or activities, when does anybody know what the rules are? So my answer to that is that when I'm going to do what's developmentally appropriate. So depending on what developmental stage my students are at, if it's elementary, the sport or the activity we're teaching might look differently and should look differently and should be taught differently than the same sport at the secondary level, at the high school level. Because I've got littler people, that way I may need littler equipment. I may not need as much room, as much space. When I get to the high school level, I have got bigger people, which is a good, I mean, I shouldn't say good thing, but is a reality. But the skill level is still going to be, there's still going to be that huge range. Those students who are good athletes and who've already selected doing sports are doing a lot of things outside of the physical education program. They're doing clubs, they're doing things outside of school, practicing outside of school, and those type of things. So I think there's a fine line between teaching the sport traditionally and how it's played traditionally versus figuring out activities and challenges to move them through the continuum to get to that point. And not every student is going to get to that point where they're going to be successful playing. Let's just take soccer, being successful playing soccer, 11-on-11 soccer. So, yes, we do need to teach the sport. They need to understand what it looks like in a traditional sense. But I think it's more important that they develop the skills moving toward that and having understanding what it looks like traditionally. Sometimes we get caught up in looking at the elite level and what's going on at an elite level and trying to get kids that are not developmentally ready to make that jump from basically beginner to elite with the activities that we choose, the skills and drills that we use. Whereas instead of taking them through that step-by-step process that every elite athlete had to go through to get to that point, they didn't start as an elite athlete. They were developed and trained to be an elite athlete. And the concepts that we have at the concepts that they need to know at the elite level, we can build on those concepts as well. For example, the concept of moving into open space. There are so many activities we can do that teach students to be able to move to open space without having to do it with that one specific sport. Although we could use that sport as part of it, but moving to open space, it's used in basketball, it's used in soccer or football, it's used in team handball. I mean, it's used in so many things. It's used in tag games. It's used in a lot of different areas. That's just one concept that we teach. A more sophisticated or a higher level concept is offensive strategy and knowing where my teammates are going to be at a specific time. Well, that takes a good understanding and a good level of skill because you have to have the skill before you can start thinking about where am I going to pass it? Where are my athletes or where are my teammates going to be? So that I'm putting the ball or placing the ball in a position that they're going to, not the position they were at before, if that makes sense.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Shamal.
Thanks, Amal, and thank you. Kishore sir, let's have your remarks. I think there are questions.
I'd like to congratulate and place on record our appreciation to Professor Michael Messerole for his excellent deliberations and taking up all the questions and clearing all doubts of inclusive PE, focus on the implementation of unified physical education. In fact, there are these type of thoughts like what Mr. Amal was just now telling about if there is only a few differently able, how to take on them, how to take with the general class. This type of doubts prevail in almost all the teachers and community coaches. So first and foremost thing in these things, as rightly mentioned, is that we must have a clear set mindset that inclusive means in its fullest sense it should contain all. There is no exclusions. Exclusions should not be there. So this has been how to include, what are the strategies, what are the tips, what are the we have to keep in mind, that has been very clearly spelled out in this presentation. And I think that will definitely give insight to each and every physical education teacher and community coach to deal, to take on the classes, take on the program, various training programs in a unified manner and also inclusive of all categories of all athletes and trainees with them. There should not be any sort of bifurcation. Differently able are a part of us, and they should, every training program, every are meant for them also. There is no exclusions. So this has been explicitly made clear by Professor Michael. I congratulate you, sir, and also I'm sure that this will definitely would have benefited all the PE and community coach faculty whomsoever have been listening. Thank you so much once again. Over to Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore sir.
Thank you.
Mike, I know that you're familiar with Fatima. Fatima is from Morocco. The first, I always say, the first female Moroccan to represent Morocco for the Olympics is what Fatima is. So I'm happy Fatima is here. Fatima, for your remarks, please. You can just say us. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Usha, for your presentation every day, every time. And congratulations for all these conferences. It's very, very interesting. Thank you for Professor Mikhail Messerole for your presentation. It's very, very interesting, and it show we how important, how is useful adapted physical activity and physical education for disability persons. I am in admiration. In admiration, it's say about what you do in the United States of America. We have in Morocco many athletes who win many medals in the Special Olympic, in the continental competitions, but we have not a system for education for coaches, for instructors, and I would like to have some institutes, special institutes for education in Morocco. We have with federation, with the Special Olympics, but like in the United States, like in Canada, in Sweden, in France, I think in India also we need this some institutions like this form. Professor Mikhail, I have many ideas, but my English is very, very bad. It's not my working language, and I'm sorry, I cannot give my what I want to say. If you speak in French, I have many things, many ideas, many ideas to share with you. But my English is so bad. Unfortunately, congratulations for your presentations. It was very interesting.
Well, I'm gonna share my email with you, and we could email back and forth because I want to hear what your ideas are. So I'm putting this in the chat right now.
Yes.
Yeah. I know Fatima is speaking a foreign language. English is a foreign language, Fatima.
Yeah. No, I get it. French is a foreign language to me too. I know very little.
I speak very well French, Arabic, Romanian, because I have studied 5 years in Romania. But my English, it's not my working language. It's very bad. Wow.
It's not bad. It's not actually. It's pretty good. You're doing well, Fatima. You're doing well.
Thank you. I must practice it every day, but it's not. I have no opportunities to practice and to work with English every day.
Thank you.
So,
thank you so much, Fatima.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Usha.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So indeed, Mike, like it was such a wonderful session because the best part of it, you started with, yes, I can. And I think it's nothing to do with any disability. I think it's do more with the normal people because most of us, we feel we cannot. So I think a pledge for each one of us, yes, I can. That was something so motivating. You've inspired us with the yes, I can. And I'm sure our PE teachers together are going to have this, yes, I can. So there's nothing impossible which you're going to do it. Thank you so much for bringing in. And you brought in the concept, like the answer you put in was, most of us do not know what the unrealistic expectations. And another best part you said is the social skills, which I felt was so informative. You said more than the physical skills that you require is the social skills, which helps you endure in. So that's something, often people don't talk of it. I think then it comes as a holistic approach. So many of them athletes are there, but you felt was you will be successful in life if you can take along with that the social skills. So I think the entire session was so informative because from each of the sessions you could learn. And the best part was how do these you could call it those with less of ability and together bringing in, and they brought it such a big change. And the future, I'm told the future is with unified sport. But I don't know, because since you tell in India it is there, maybe there are in few places, but I think that can change. If this sport can change a school, I think it can do wonders, you said, in terms of communities. So it's high time that our PE teachers take up this, and we at our level would definitely tell you wherever we get opportunity. I'd like to express, especially with our Kishore sir, who's very positive, and anywhere who needs, he says opportunities are here. And the entire facility is let out for those people. They can come here, they can avail all the, they can even get the expertise. So in such cases, if every institution's community open up, I think this will come up and the whole mindset will change. So that's a great concept you brought in. In India, we had to catch up, even though maybe at various levels in small pockets they might have, but I think it's a huge change which the example of USA has brought out. And I'm sure these children would be the future for a better country and for a better world. So on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, a big thank you to you, because we would like to know more from you, because you are a teacher training, director of a teacher training institutions. So we look forward to tips from you, because what you do there, there's a lot of difference what we happen to have it here. So I think we need to be changing. And so with the changing times, we'll be wanting so much from you to learn, because you don't only teach, you see that you practice what you teach, and your children or the products which come out are able to be globally accepted. So that's the most important thing. So on behalf of the ministry, again, Youth Affairs and Sports, lectured by National College of Physical Education, a big thank you and hats off to you, because it's for the twice. First time you came at 1:30 a.m. in the morning, which I can't believe you made it. And now again, I'm sure it's been so hectic, you were coughing in between. But you made it a point of coming in. So it shows. Thank you so much, Mike, for this wonderful informative session which you have given us, and all our PE teachers are indebted to you. Thank you. I'd like to thank Fatima. I always say, because you're so loving, I always believe, we keep waiting, when will Fatima come in? And I have to tell it, just because she's, among all our speakers, she's the only Olympian who had represented, the first Olympian to have represented the country. So I always have to tell it. And it's a matter of pride for us that we are from Morocco, an Olympian, and the first Olympian coming in. Thank you so much, Fatima, because Fatima makes it a point every time to attend our session as a panelist. And Fatima was a speaker too. She was a speaker for the first batch too. And she's got so much of quantum in it, a great administrator and a sportsman. Thank you so much, Fatima, for this, for your presence. Your presence itself is a blessing for us. Thank you, Fatima. I'd like to thank Kishore sir, as I mentioned rightly. He's a great administrator, visionary, and who wants to see that our institute is not only known in India, but across the world. And he takes in every stride to learn what are the tips. That's the very purpose of this international platform, to take up lessons and see that how best we could implement, and to make connections and network by which our future Indians get a platform, so that at the global level also we are known. Thank you so much, Kishore sir, for having supported this mission. And we are indeed again blessed to have you as our leader. Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Amal. Amal, thank you so much for being I think you're also growing day by day, becoming smarter. Thank you so much, Amal, for being a co-host and a great volleyball player too. And I'm sure with this PE program, you learned a lot. Thank you so much, Amal. I'd like to thank Harihar, Jaipal, and Pranesh for the valuable technical assistance that you've given. And my dear PE teachers, I need to thank you, because every time I keep telling you, you are the heart and soul of this program. And all our experts are just coming in because of you. Or else we would never had such experts coming in. And you are great. For the information of Mike, we conducted a webinar, not a day program on role of exercise in prevention of breast cancer. And our PE teachers did a commendable job. In a notice of just maybe 6 hours, we had 500 of our participants who got in together. So that's what our this group is great. So I always say we are change makers. That's what we have an ambassador, a band of PE teachers and community coaches who are ready to take up the job at the task. Thank you so much, my dear PE teachers. So once again, I thank each one of you for your valuable presence. And thank you and namaste. Thank you. Thank you so much.